Once upon a time, Star Wars wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural movement. It was the gold standard of sci-fi storytelling, the perfect balance of myth, adventure, and cinematic magic, and for decades, it was untouchable. You see, it wasn't just a brand, it was mythology. George Lucas didn't just create movies, he built a universe. He defined modern storytelling. He set the standard for what an event movie could be. Even the prequels, divisive as they were, felt like major moments in cinema history. Because Star Wars was rare. It was an experience. It mattered. In 2012, the galaxy far, far away got a new emperor, and this one didn't even need a Death Star. Disney bought Lucasfilm for $4.05 billion, and suddenly, the biggest sci-fi franchise of all time wasn't a story anymore. It was a financial asset.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
No! God, please, no! No!
And by financial asset, I mean they milk it harder than a bantha on Tatooine. Before Disney, Star Wars had 6 movies in nearly 40 years. That's it. Every release was an event. But once Disney took over, suddenly we had 5 movies, multiple TV shows, and an endless content pipeline all within a decade.
Content.
And just like that, Star Wars went from being special to just another corporate content mill.
It's worth.
Because here's the thing, Star Wars isn't Marvel, but Disney tried to make it Marvel, and that is where the identity crisis began. Here is the problem. Exclusivity builds value. The more you limit something, the more people want it. And that's why the original Star Wars trilogy was legendary, because it was rare, it was special. But Disney didn't want Star Wars to be special. They wanted it to be endless. And when a brand is too available, it starts to feel cheap.
What a piece of junk!
Instead of building or expanding on a brand, they exploited one. And that's how we got to where we are today, where Star Wars is still big,
We still got a grand army.
but it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
And that's exactly what happened. Disney thought they could turn Star Wars into the next Marvel. But they forgot one thing. Star Wars was never Marvel to begin with.
Hey guys, you ever seen that really old movie? Empire Strikes Back?
One of the biggest problems with modern Star Wars isn't just that it's everywhere, it's that it has no idea who it's for anymore.
I'm all the Jedi.
Once upon a time, George Lucas had a clear answer. Star Wars was a coming-of-age myth for kids, influenced by samurai films, Flash Gordon, and Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. But today, it's everything?
Get him out of there. No. Come on.
It's a gritty war drama, it's a corporate tie-in, it's nostalgia bait, it's literally Saturday morning cartoon energy, and then there's whatever the hell Rise of Skywalker was trying to do. And yet, instead of building something new, Disney keeps trying to play both sides, clinging to nostalgia whilst pretending that they're innovating. One of the golden rules of branding: know your audience. Because the moment you try to please everyone, you start to alienate everyone. Think about brands that get this right. Apple doesn't just suddenly start making budget Android phones to attract everyone. Elden Ring doesn't throw in an easy mode just to appeal to casual gamers. They know exactly who they're for, and they double down on it. But Star Wars, it's been bouncing around aimlessly, shifting tone, target audience, and creative direction so much that it's created more fan wars than actual wars in the galaxy. And that brings us to the great fan divide. I'm going to trademark that. Right now, Star Wars has 3 main audience groups, and Disney's been terrible at balancing them. These are the purists, the ones who grew up with the original trilogy and prequels. They want new Star Wars, but they want it to feel consistent with what came before. Instead, they got The Last Jedi, which basically told them, your heroes suck and the past doesn't matter. And then Disney went, wait, no, nostalgia's back in. Here's more Obi-Wan and Vader fights. You like that, right? This group came in post-Disney, through The Force Awakens, The Mandalorian, and the Disney Plus shows. They enjoy the franchise as it is today, not how it used to be. For them, Rey is their Luke, Grogu is their Yoda, but the content they're getting is inconsistent at best. Imagine being a fan of Boba Fett and realizing halfway through his own show that it's just The Mandalorian DLC edition.
Yes?
Then you've got the casuals, the real people Disney is marketing to. They don't follow fan debates, they don't care about canon, they just see Baby Yoda, say "ah" and go buy a plushie. These groups all exist, and Disney keeps swinging wildly between them instead of committing to a clear identity.
Rey Skywalker.
You serious?
Here's where Star Wars tried to copy Marvel, and it backfired. Despite its obvious struggles and failings in its own right, Marvel originally spent a decade carefully laying out its roadmap. And with Star Wars, well, they tried building the plane whilst flying it. The literal definition of throwing at the wall and hoping something sticks. Brand consistency matters. Audiences need a reason to invest. And if every new project contradicts the last one, people stop caring. Disney wants Star Wars to be everything for everyone, but instead it's becoming nothing to anyone. There was a time when Star Wars was a self-contained saga, a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. But Disney didn't just buy a franchise, they bought an infinite content machine, or at least that's what they thought.
You have to pay for those.
Once upon a time, getting a new Star Wars story was a major event. Now, we're drowning in a never-ending stream of content that barely knows what it wants to be. And the real problem is that not every story needs to be a franchise. Star Wars started as a self-contained myth.
Once upon a time, there was a lovely Jedi.
Not an endless cinematic universe, but in trying to stretch it beyond its limits, Disney diluted its core identity. In business, scarcity drives demand. When something is limited, it feels special. That's why early Star Wars releases were events. But when you flood the market with too much too fast, the audience stops caring. We've seen this across industries. Oversaturation leads to diminishing returns. The more Star Wars Disney cranked out, the less people showed up. Solo bombed, The Rise of Skywalker underperformed, and now half the fandom doesn't even know which TV show is which. For brands, more content isn't always better. Sometimes less is more. If your audience starts tuning out, it's time to rethink your strategy. Nostalgia can be an extremely powerful tool. Done right, it re-engages old fans and introduces new ones. Done wrong, it's just cheap fan service with no substance. Star Wars has become trapped in its own past. Instead of pushing the brand forward, it keeps recycling old characters, old villains, old plot lines, because that's easier than creating something new. Nostalgia should be a feature, not a crutch. If your brand relies only on what came before, eventually people stop caring. When Disney Plus launched, Star Wars took a major shift. Now, instead of big movies, we got an endless stream of TV shows. Disney thought moving to streaming would save Star Wars from franchise fatigue, but instead, it just turned Star Wars into content sludge. Before, Star Wars releases were major events. Now they just blend together. Half the audience doesn't even know what's coming out next. When a brand floods the market, its perceived value drops. Instead of making Star Wars scarce and special, Disney made it common and forgettable. Disney thought Star Wars could be infinite, but not every brand can sustain endless expansion. Now, the real question is, Star Wars can be fixed, but Disney needs to rethink its entire approach. Step 1. Stop the content machine and focus on quality over quantity. Fewer projects, more focus. Not every side character or side character's brother or sister needs a piece of content. Look at how Andor succeeded because it was carefully planned, not rushed. Step 2. Define a clear creative vision. No more disjointed trilogies. Hire a creative director to oversee Star Wars long term, the way Lucas did. Stop chasing trends and define what modern Star Wars should be. And step 3. Make Star Wars an event again. Limit releases to one major project every 2 to 3 years. Build anticipation again. When Star Wars was rare, it was cherished. Now it's just content noise.
Now this is pod racing.
If Star Wars wants to thrive again, it needs to stop being content and start being cinema. Disney has the money, the resources, and the talent, but they need to rediscover why Star Wars matters. If Disney keeps its current course, Star Wars won't die, but it'll fade into irrelevance. It'll be just another IP instead of the cultural phenomenon it was. In cinema, apathy is a worse fate than death. Despite these key risks, Star Wars can still be legendary, but only if Disney is willing to stop treating it like a product and start treating it like a story again.
I'm Rey.
Rey who?
Rey Skywalker.
No, you're Rey Disney, here to sell us Funko Pops.